จานข้าวอยู่ไหนจุดไฟในนี้ไฟไม่ได้เปิดไม่ได้ปิดไว้
Distinguished guests, speakers, partners, colleagues, and friends. Very good morning, Sawadika. On behalf of Chulalongkorn University, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the public forum, which marks the launch of UNESCO Chair for Resource Governance in JASID. My name is Michiko Yoshida, Director of Global Networking and Engagement of the Office of International Affairs. In materializing the launch of Chula's UNESCO Chair, we have received general support from partners across the world. We are grateful to confirm our shared aspirations and collaborations to reshape our vision, practices, and strategies toward transforming governance and institutions across society. Taking this opportunity, we'd like to express our sincere appreciation to UNESCO, the Thai National Commission for UNESCO, UNESCO Futures Leadership Global Network Conference, and our co-organizer of today's public forum, Japan Society for International Development Studies, and all the partners, some of whose representatives are here today. We are live streaming this event on Facebook. Therefore, my warmest welcome to those of you joining us online from different time zones. Good afternoon and evening. Without further ado, may I now invite Associate Professor Dr. Pratbong Siriprat, Dean of the Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University, to give welcome remarks. Professor Pratbong, please.
Thank you very much, Michiko. Okay, welcome everyone to the Alumni Association meeting room on the 12th floor of the Kasem Utyanin building at Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Faculty of Political Science and the Center for Social Development Studies at Chulalongkorn University, I'm very pleased to offer some brief welcoming remarks to this launch event for the UNESCO Chair in Resource Governance and Future Literacy. It's my pleasure to warmly welcome all participants to the Faculty of Political Science today. Both these joining in person and this online. And to initiate the launch of the Chulalongkorn University UNESCO Chair in Resource Governance and Future Literacy, I would like to begin by sincerely thanking the speakers for today who have kindly agreed to share their research and experience. I would also like to thank the co-organizers of today's launch for their effort in making it a success, namely the Office of the International Affairs and Global Network, Chulalongkorn University, the Japan Society for International Development or JASID, and the Center for Social Development Studies. It is also deeply appreciated that a representative of the Thai National Commission for UNESCO has kindly made time to join us. The Chulalongkorn University UNESCO Chair in Resource Governance and Future Literacy is intended to promote future literacy-focused networking, research, dialogue, and capacity strengthening. Future literacy is a capability and a skill that enable better understanding and anticipation of the role that the future plays in society. The chair itself is a university-level institutional chair that will proactively and constructively engage toward the inclusive, equitable, and sustainable resolution of resource governance challenges, emphasizing the identification and transformative pathways to building future literacy. The chair has received the strong support of the Thai National Commission for UNESCO since its initial conception, as well as the UNESCO Future Literacy and Foresight team based in Paris. The overarching objective of the chair are to build future literacy capacities and anticipatory competencies, to deepen conceptual understanding of resource governance futures, to undertake interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research, and finally, to serve as a convening platform for future literacy on resource governance. This is an important initiative on the part of Chulalongkorn University to contribute toward inclusive innovation and future-oriented thinking for the benefit of the society in Thailand, Southeast Asia, and beyond. The Faculty of Political Science, as a partner of the chair, is committed to actively contribute to the success. Through the discussion this morning, I hope that recommendations can be made toward refining the mission of the UNESCO chair and suggestions offered on how to achieve this through partnerships. In conclusion, the Faculty of Political Science is very honored to co-host this important launch event today, and I would like to wish you engaging and meaningful discussion, and thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you, and welcome to the Political Science Faculty.
Thank you very much. Next, it is my great honor to invite Ms. Ria Viwan, Special Advisor of Thai National Commission for UNESCO, to give us in the press. Ms. Ria is advisor to the Office of Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, who has been recognized for outstanding leaderships in the area of international collaboration and education, especially during her tenure as Deputy Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Education and as Acting Deputy Permanent Delegate in the Permanent Delegation of the Kingdom of Thailand. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms.
Good day to all of you. I understand that there are both here participants online and at the site. So I wish all of you a good day. Associate Professor Dr. Sakorn Siri Prakop, Dean of Faculty of Political Science, Professor Dr. Surichai Wankeo, Director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, Assistant Professor Dr. Carl Middleton, Director of Center for Social Development Studies, Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University. First of all, I would like to thank Chulalongkorn University for accepting to be the chair of the Resource Governance and Futures Literacy. And this morning, I I'm very honored and have the privilege to represent the Thai National Commission for UNESCO, Ministry of Education, to join all of you today. So thank once again for this initiative from especially Professor Dr. Surishai Wangel, who was discussing this and expressing his intention, and we have been working together to work out, and finally the UNESCO has accepted the Chulalongkorn University to be the UNESCO share of the resource governance and future education. As we all know, presently our world is in a severe and harmful situation. So it's quite difficult to keep up with many challenges that we are facing today, and of course we will face, and we don't know what we will face in the future. However, if the citizens of the world practice solidarity and sincerity, we can achieve our goals. Especially, we talk a lot about the SDG 17 goals, and because of the pandemic, I think that the SDGs, many goals have been delayed. So we have to work harder in the future to achieve the goals by 2030. As education agencies and partners, we have a commitment to lead and guide our citizens and society as a whole. As a result of this, everyone must think and act in a responsible manner, which is a sustainable way to make our future world a better one, especially in education sector. I think we have to work harder than other sectors because we have our standalone goal on the SDG 4, but at the same time, we have to link education to other goals. So we have to work harder just to make our future more sustainable. And today is another great step for all of us, especially the experts, academics, and the participants who join this event, both online and in person at Chulalongkorn University. So that we can discuss and propose ideas and initiatives in the fields of resource governance and futures literacy. I also believe that more relevant issues will be of interest and in order to achieve our common goals, which is to create a better society for the benefit of everyone, especially to our younger generations. And this includes human security, a healthy environment, a social and ecological justice, just to make our society inclusive. I would like to take this opportunity once again to welcome all of you and congratulate the Assistant Professor Dr. Carl Mitterton, Director of the Center for Social Development Studies, Faculty of Political Science of Chulalongkorn University, for your leadership in the future as a key person in driving this mission of UNESCO Share. You might have to work very hard in terms of, mobilize the resources, both in terms of the, expert and the some other resources, both national and international networks, and all stakeholders from all sectors. We wish you great success in your mission. And in conclusion, I would like to thank the Dean of the Faculty of Political Science for your leadership here, and Associate Professor Dr. Surishai Wangel for his initiative and make it come true. Without all of you, we will not have this event today. So I would like to convey my sincere appreciation to all of you, and to our honorable guests and speakers who will participate in the panel after this. And again, special thanks to all of you for joining us today. So thank you very much to all of you and have a good day and pleasant meeting. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you very much, Mr. Ria, for your opening address and your encouragement to mark the launch of the Chulalongkorn University UNESCO project. May I also express my sincere appreciation for the kind presence of two representatives from Thai National Commission for UNESCO, Kun Chulalongkorn and Kun Sri. Thank you very much for your presence. Before we start the discussion, allow me to make a few housekeeping announcements. We are live streaming today's public forum on Facebook. The link is now in the description. Please feel free to disseminate the link to your colleagues and friends. Q&A and open discussion time is secured after panelists' presentation. Please feel free to send your questions and comments in the chat. Thank you very much for your kind attention. May I now invite the first session panelists over here. Over here. And may I now invite the moderator of the first session, Dr. Chayan. Please, Dr. Chayan is a Deputy Director of Stockholm Environmental Institute. She has been working in the macro region for over 20 years and has extensive experience in leading multi-country projects across several research disciplines combined with policy engagement. Since 2011, she has been leading a sustainable research network, a research network of 15 member institutions aiming to influence sustainable development in the region.
Thank you very much คุณมิชิโกะอาจารย์เขาลักษริชัย and all organizing team from Chulalongkorn University and also UNESCO for inviting me to engage in this very important initiative. So to be honest, when I heard about this initiative, I think since the last year, right? When our organization ACI, which is kindly hosted by Chulalongkorn University at 10th floor. So we are kind of a neighbor and really close friend. And I'm so happy to see many good friends here, my senior and friends here. And I feel this is really important for us to connect. Why? Because as you already heard from Associate Professor Gop mentioned, how ambitious of this initiative. Their UNESCO share in resource governance and digital literacy, aiming at establish the hub. Not only the hub of researchers, which many of us here are always working together, but the hub will have ambitions to engage with policymakers actors and graduate students, civil societies who really have a passion in working on the issues of the justice, fairness, and how to make the resource governance more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. I sometimes ask, this is really, similar to the missions and the visions and the aspiration of many initiatives. What is our lacking is how can we really work together instead of we do this separately? How can we really make this as effort, collective effort? And that's really something that I feel always passionate to see how we can strengthen partnership and really engage more with young generations to be on stage, to be confident, to speak, to be really feeling on and want to be part of the futures of our earth and the world. And that's why I feel so lucky that we have this initiative. Because when I read the missions and the aim of this initiative, it's really would like to engage with many partners and to make sure that we actually consider global perspective. While focusing Southeast Asia, but we want to draw upon the experience and expertise, research findings, tools, methodologies, connections from partners, friends globally. And I think this partner is kind of perfect. Why? Because we have really excellent speakers working from many parts of the world. So, and I would like to really introduce them who will share their view on this topic. And I actually asked Michiko, what is the expectation on this panel? She said she actually asked the speakers to talk and interpret in their own opinion on this theme. And second, make recommendations on what is the future role of the UNESCO chair on this, what they need to do. But what I would like to personally ask each speaker to end is, okay, this is the organizing team requesting. I would like to personally request what you see as your common interest on this initiative, and you see objective and things. What you can and you feel you like to join the effort. Then after this meeting, everyone will be busy. So Ajahn Call, Michiko, and many others could really quietly, informally follow up with you. What is the thing that we could do together? So that is my personal request. Okay. So now let us proceed to the formal session. We have 4 excellent speakers. First, I'd like to introduce them each. And I like to propose, because we don't have much time, for the speakers to speak 12 to 15 minutes. And then we proceed with the 2 speakers first. And then we break, ask and see how many colleagues online or on-site want to ask the questions. And then after we have a quick response, we could proceed to the last 2 speakers, do the same. And then we will, if we have time, we can make the floor really open to really reflect and also share if any participant on-site or online would like to comment and contribute to the discussion as well. Would it be all right? Yeah, that's great. The first speakers today, we have Miss Elodie Jacquet, Manager of Knowledge and Practice for Maurice J. Waugh Center for Dialogue, Simon Fraser Universities from Canada. So you see that we have a colleague from Canada, and then we have Dr. Pasang Donma Sherpa, who's sitting on the right-hand side of me. She is Executive Director of Center for Indigenous Peoples Research and Development from Nepal. So, of course, we need to have the expert from Thailand. I would like to welcome, I think, Ajahn Apiwat, Associate Professor Apiwat, Ratanawala is joining us online from Department of Urban and Regional Planning and Center for Science, Technologies and Society from Chulalongkorn Universities. Last but not least, we also have Professor Dr. Yuto Kitamura from Graduate Schools of Education, University of Tokyo, and Institute for Futures Initiatives. So we actually more or less alumni because I graduated from University of Tokyo. Ajahn Professor Sawatya and Surichai also my senior, so very warm welcome to the panel. Okay, so let's start with the first speakers. So Irodi, please, I think you have slides, right? I will give a small warning around 3 minutes before the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the honor of having me here on this wonderful panel. I'm just very excited by the topic that was going to be presented today. So as mentioned, I worked with Simon Fraser University's Morris J. Boss Center in Iowa for many, many years. I am actually on the cusp of retiring from that position and punching into a PhD right now. So I'm sort of in between projects. But what I wanted to talk about today was really some of the work we've done over the past several years around futures literacy with students in our university and around the world. So if I could get the slides maybe up, go from there. Thank you. So first of all, I'm going to use a very good example of what futures literacy might look like. The angle of climate futures. It's something we've been working on for many years with my colleagues, both colleagues in Canada, in Finland, and in France. Over the past 2 years, we've engaged with cohorts of people to talk about what climate futures might look like and what we might do to reimagine them. And I think this is important as we look at this UNESCO chair to bring back the word imagination. Our students are often not given the opportunity to imagine futures. But to start off, maybe all of you have been aware that the IPCC has released its sixth assessment report. Next slide, please. And this assessment report gave us a very stark warning as humanity. We know that there is now unequivocal influence on the warming of our planet, and the scale of changes to our climate as a whole are going to be very stark. What we know is that climate change is already affecting many, many areas of our well-being, whether it's our ecology, our societies, our ability to provide the equity and inclusion that we talked about. So although this is very stark warning, I think there's still a lot of hope, and I see much of that hope within the young people I work with on a regular basis. Next slide, please. However, these young people have already told us, for example, that they are not feeling very well prepared to tackle these challenges. So I'm sharing here a study that was done with young people ages 16 to 25 in 10 countries. And a lot of them said they were extremely worried about climate change. 84% were at least moderately worried, 9 were very extremely worried about it. But more than 50% of these young people also reported emotions like sadness, anxiety, anger, powerlessness, helplessness, and guilt. What that tells us is that our educational systems around the world are not preparing our young people to tackle the challenge, but also to feel confident that they have the tools and literacy to do so. Next slide, please. So what do we know from these young people? Another survey that was conducted in the UK last year found that many young people did not feel they had a good degree of education and understanding of climate. Many of these young people felt utterly unprepared to tackle this issue, but also to understand exactly what it meant from a climate perspective. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So a lot of these young people are also reporting lower rates of confidence in governmental responses to climate change. And what I hear from my students year in and year out is that many of them feel that they want to take care of planet and the people, but they do not feel their governments are either equipped or understand how to do this in an integrated way. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, some of these young people reported that they have learned a little bit about climate change in their school years, but despite that, they're not completely sure what to do. And 6 out of 10 of them really are concerned about what to do and the proportion of the impacts that we will be facing in the future. So again, what I see is a lot of anxiety in young people, a lot of hopelessness, but I think universities are very well positioned to help these young people tackle these challenges. Next slide, please. In the project that I worked on in the past couple of years on reimagining climate futures, we developed what we call a kinship model for resource governance. And this was based, again, on the feedback that we received from many young people, but also from the nations we worked with from different communities facing climate change. And we know one of the biggest issues with tackling a wicked problem like climate change is fragmentation and silos within how we govern these problems. So what we found is that if we have a kinship model, we can reinvent the relationship we have with the planet, with sustainability, and with the peoples of the planet. So again, to your point, it is thinking about how this future can be inclusive, equitable, and sustainable for all. Next slide, please. So what does this kinship model entail? It means we need to think about the planet, we need to think about the people of the planet. We need to work on the places we live in. We know climate change has impacts everywhere, but these impacts look different depending on locality. I know, for example, here in Thailand, some communities are dealing with rising sea levels, which means some communities have now flooded quite significantly. So again, understanding what impacts in what places will be very important. We also need to think about the knowledge that we have. And this knowledge is not only held by scientists and policymakers, it is also held by the traditions and stories. So I hope my colleague will be able to talk a little bit about that as well. But we also have many practices that we do in communities, but also within universities that can help tackle this. And overall, what we need is a new system of governance that helps us understand all these different aspects of how we live together, so we can reinvent that relationship with our planet. Next slide, please. So I thought what I proposed here was an example of how we've tried to bring in a new way of thinking about future cities with our students. We have tried to imagine what a semester for schools would look like that would be different than so fragmented and siloed education system. As you know, many of our students enter university in a certain faculty. They might be working on science, they might be working on climate science, they might be working in sociology, anthropology, biology. But oftentimes these students don't have an opportunity to work with each other or interact with each other. And what we need is more bridges to be built between different areas of expertise and knowledge. So the Center for Dialogue has launched since 2002 something called the Semester in Dialogue, where we bring a cohort of students from different faculties for a very intense 7-week program that is based on experiential education. It introduces the complexity and systems thinking, and it values community engagement projects and research. And what we're hoping with that is that it will defragment education and allow students to interact with each other, but also learn from different fields and also from communities and places they are in. So this program started in 2002, as I said, and the first topic of the program was nature, environment, and society. And since then, we've had on average 2 to 3 semesters every year, and most of them had a focus again on the features of what we might like for students. Next slide, please. So what do these semesters look like? We bring these cohorts of students together to enhance their civic responsibility, and again, help them really understand what an interdisciplinary experience would look like, and also reflect on how they can learn from the communities they work with in a reciprocal manner. So again, not just extracting information from communities, but finding out how they can support communities to tackle their problems. So what we've noticed over the many years that we've held this program is that students value very much this experience of education because it helps them go beyond the boundaries of their traditional faculties. It opens their minds up. It allows them to develop qualities of dialogue and mutual respect that aren't necessarily taught in their traditional programs. So next slide, please. This program is very much based on dialogue. It's based on experiential learning. So not necessarily learning in the classroom, but leaving the classroom to go into communities. It is focused on impact. Each group of students has to develop a project in the community and take this project to the end and have a positive impact. It is based on relationships. Students with each other need to learn respect, dialogue, but they also need to learn how to interact with different groups in communities, but also thought leaders and policymakers to help understand the complexity of the world. It has a heavy content knowledge, but we understand knowledge is not only being academic, we also need a lot of knowledge from communities. And it has a healthy component of self-reflection where we allow our students to think about what they've learned and how they might apply this as they move forward in their education. Each group in their own faculties will have an opportunity to have a positive impact on the world. And we hope this enhanced capacity for dialogue will really help them understand the nuances of public issues and to develop the skills to foster these partnerships that are grounded in qualities of mutual respect and co-creation. So next slide, please. I'm gonna wrap up quickly now. I think I have only 2 minutes left. A typical day at the student side would look like this. They might be a thought leader. So thought leader might be a policymaker. It might be an important community member. And they are going to learn from them a particular perspective on the problem they're trying to tackle. They are going to debrief as a group what they've learned. They might spend some time developing projects together. They might also have a number of workshops to teach them how to write newspaper articles for the wider public. As we know, academic writing is not always accessible to the wider public, so we want to equip our students with the ability to communicate with them, not just their academic peers. They might engage in team building exercises, again, to enhance this understanding. We do a lot of trips. They go to communities, learn with them, and develop dialogues with them. So every cohort of students has to develop a public dialogue where they bring the learnings that they found, but they also interact with communities to learn from them what solutions might be found. And there is, of course, a writing. So not only are they expected to write journal articles, but also op-eds for newspapers, but also self-reflections that they can share with their colleagues. So what I'm hoping with this example is to really enhance the necessity to defragment our education system. And I think the UNESCO chair has a unique opportunity here to bring this to a Chulalongkorn University and help bring students with different faculties together to have deep dialogues about what the future of governance and resources might look like and how to really bring that back into this relationship, this leadership model of taking into account people, sustainability, planet, and again, enhancing that equity and inclusion that we want to see. And
Thank you very much, Hilary. That's really fascinating. Last night, I have a chance to glance through to your slide, and I really say to myself, wow, that's really fantastic model. And I really, after hearing the story that you make, I just really say, oh, that's really true. That's really a lot of issue and challenge, not only for the students that working on silos and things, even us here, the experts. We work on water and people just care about water quality or quantity, but the water is actually life. So how we can really learn from the model and the examples you use for also expanding and considering other contexts as well. So I have solo questions here, but let's keep at this stage and then we can continue afterward. But last, just really one point clarifications. So the student that you mentioned here, it's like a which level, university or the
These are undergraduate students, so before their master's degree, they will take this semester, so it's an additional semester here.
Excellent. So thank you very much. Now let us proceed to the next speakers. Elodie already mentions that Hassan will actually say something more about communities and others. I'm really excited to hear what you really interpret on this theme and what would you recommend and want to really collaborate with us. So thank you. Please.
Swadika, Tasdile, Namaskar. Thank you so much for this great opportunity. It's my honor to be one of the panelists, distinguished panelists, and also among all our professors. And thank you so much for your invitations. This is my second time visiting Chulalongkorn University. The first time I came here, not a while back, I met Professor Sudichai, Professor Narumuto, and also other colleagues. So that has been already a positive indication of building our network and building our collaborations, that we move ahead with full of aspiration, hope, and for bringing the positive transformation for us to live with dignity, respect, and the future harmony with the nature, biodiversity, and the landscape we have been living. And that has been the bottom line for dealing with the present crisis, the climate crisis, natural crisis, and any crisis that we have been encountering, that we are here to explore how we can make a more sustainable future for all of us to live with. First of all, I also would like to congratulate the launch of Chulalongkorn University UNESCO Chair in Resource Governance and Future Literacy. This is one of the very important topic for us to explore, discuss, and enhance further. And my experience on the ground in the past more than 15 years, working at the community level, national level, regional level, global level, in all climate change, biodiversity, in relation to indigenous peoples, local communities, from the indigenous people's views and points, I believe that nothing is impossible if we really put our collective efforts, our positive vibes for us to transform the world that we dream for through continued collaboration and building the network. And I believe we are here for this. As we have already realized that the struggle for discussion, the discourse of climate change, even in the UNCCC since 1994, I joined this negotiation and discussion from 2009. So reflecting back my own experience, more than 15 years already on the ground level, but in the global level already more than decades. So we have not really committed for the Paris agreements that we wish for, committing 1.5 degrees temperatures that is also been highlighted by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and also, with equal respects for the human rights, especially the rights of indigenous peoples, local communities, women and children, and that we have not really been sincere. Most of our promises thus depends on the paper, not really put on the grounds. I believe through our education, mutual collaboration discussion, we could bring a lot of things, changes in the mindset of a young generation to change the paradigm shift of the way of education that we are brought up. Because we understand that our present education system that also Eddie mentioned earlier, that we are driving our young generation to more unsustainable world. And are we ready for that? So this is the time to question among ourselves. If you really want to have harmonical society, a sustainable society, this is the time to think about it, how we go back to our roots and balance it. And because the way that we have been living has not been balancing and inviting more conflicts and chaos in our own society. The people, especially the indigenous people and local communities and the women and children who have been living with the nature for generation and generation, we have been playing a really crucial role for the sustaining the management of the resources, ecosystem, biodiversity, and we are trying to disconnect their connection to their roots. So are we really heading to sustainable lives ahead? So this is the question that we need to think about it, and we need to reflect back in our education and the discussion. Today, we all are aware that we are facing a lot of crises. The crisis that one of the main crises, as I said, that we are away every day from our roots. So we are inviting more unsustainable. So this is the time that we need to connect to our roots, connect to our culture, connect to our values, connect to our spiritual and society. And that has been one of the bottom line for sustaining our world and continuation by a future generation. As we all are aware, the IPBES report and also the World Bank and IUCN, where I'm also chair of one of the commission on the CES with the indigenous peoples, sustainable human rights and developments. 6.2% of indigenous people around the world come to the fact that safeguarding more than 80% of the biodiversity. This outcome is not a joke. This outcome already shows that how important the role and contribution played by indigenous people on the ground. And more than 70% of the indigenous people around the world in Asia. So the Asia leadership is very pertinent if you really want to enhance this role and contribution ahead. And more than that, more than 74% of indigenous people around the world still living with close to the nature in the rural community. And we should be very aware that the IPCC report, 6th assessment, where I was one of the commentators during the COP, last COP in Glasgow, that importance of indigenous people and local communities already highlighted to be balanced with the science discourse on the discourse of climate change. So, and another milestone of Paris Agreement is also the establishment of the platform of local communities and indigenous peoples by the UNCCC for the first time in the history of 20 years of the struggle of indigenous people and local communities in the discourse of climate change with the three function: knowledge, capacity building, and climate policy and action on the ground. This is acknowledgement of the UNCCC that the pertinent role and contribution of indigenous peoples, knowledge, skills and values and experiences to deal with the climate change and the resilience and adaptation and mitigation. And most recently, the COP15 of the Convention of the Biological Diversity, that adoption of the global biodiversity framework is another milestone that we should be mindful that in the enhancement of the 30% of the protected and national park by 2030 is another agenda. But the good part, the good initiation at the global level is country recognition of indigenous people and local communities. I just would like to highlight further that the acknowledgement of important role and contribution of indigenous peoples, local communities as custodian of biodiversity and partners in conservation, restoration, and sustainable use. So this is one of the outcomes of the CBD, which is a good news. But as our experience already informs and tells us that, thus the good outcome of the global framework is not enough unless and until we link with our own values, our roots, and our respecting our own culture and practices, then only it will be effective. Because this kind of outcome has been there for many generations. Now this is the important time that we enhance, cultivate our young generation, that just theoretical aspects of our notion of education will no more work for our sustainable future, unless and until we go back to and connect our roots, and the roots that embedded with our culture, spiritual and the social values. So finally, I would like to also mention that the respecting to the rules and cultural values is one of the more core bottom line, is respecting and promoting and also continuation of our customary governance system. The customary governance system of more role contribution played by customary institution of indigenous peoples is very, very important. And just only to share my own experience, the efforts we have been contributing at the national level, local level, of the local recognition with the local laws recognition of the customary institution. And one of the example I would like to give that in Nepal, we have multiple, we have more than 59 indigenous groups. We have our own values and practices. I'm myself indigenous persons from the mountain regions. We have our own customary governance. We have our own sort of customary governance, management of the resources, ecosystem, and the landscape. And one of the really upcoming emerging steps we have started from the ground level, despite the conservation of national park. Now the local government, in line with the Constitution of Nepal and also the local Operational Act 2017, we started having our local act with the recognition of customary governance system, customary institution, our values and notion, and also contribution. And this has already opened a really big milestone for indigenous people to live with respect, dignity, and sovereignty, and also protection of our knowledge, culture, values to be continued by future generations. Now, I would like to end with one quotation of one of our community leaders. After the adoption of Shakya customary governance by the local act, he said in the media, he said, "We have been living in harmony with nature and biodiversity since time immemorial. The protection of our customary institution and governance system and continuation of our cultural values is only possible through legal recognition by the local laws, which we have now and proud to have it." And with this one, I would like to wrap up the first one, but maybe I can jump in next for your last question. Or yeah, I can continue.
Yes, please.
Okay,
Kylie.
so the last one, I just keep the note for your last question. I think I also presented briefly that what we would like to have to see in the ahead. I think I felt personally that the leadership of Chulalongkorn University as UNESCO chair is a really, really the pertinent role for connecting, South-South collaborations and among the researchers, academicians, students, community leaders, elected bodies, decision makers on the platform to internalize how important it is to reflect back, learn lessons from our own experience and own journey ahead. That where are we heading to question among ourselves, and how we put our efforts to connect to our roots and respecting cultural values that I mentioned earlier. And I believe that we can continue this collaboration and networking and helping each other, learning from each other, and also supporting for each other for a sustainable world we want to live with each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pasang. I feel we so lucky to have you joining us because that's very rare chance to see and meet strong ladies who carry the passions on ground and be really able to speak in an international level and bring back and to tell many of us here who probably not have in-person opportunity to engage in such conversations by ourselves. We just watch television, hear someone speak, and we are here having you in person to say what has been the achievement in the discussion at global level and what is still really lacking, reflecting from opportunities that you are living with people on ground there. And the last point and the quote that you mentioned, I could feel the sense of really hope that local act and actions actually happening in some locations. And as now she mentioned here that really wished CU Chulalongkorn University could really share and lead this initiative for us to learn from each other. And thank you so much for that. Now, I think we could have really open discussions, or maybe we start with any questions to the speakers first. We have two excellent speakers, strong women working in different countries, and really come with a lot of useful suggestions and knowledge to share with us. Anyone here on site would like to have a question? For the interest of time, I would like to collect one or two questions. We have one. Anyone else here? Okay, so we can proceed with, can you first introduce yourself and then ask the question? And if possible, could you say which speakers want to ask the question? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jin Sato. I'm from the University of Tokyo. I really enjoyed the panel this morning, and thank you so much for allowing me to participate. I have a question for Ms. Elodie. So I really like your initiative to gather students, but I think the problem of fragmentation is more about professors, not so much about students. So I want to know whether you have done, you have any successful example of defragment the professors, not students, because students I think are fine. They're flexible and they can work together. Professors, it's really hard to make them work together. So this is the challenge, I think. And I do see that the students will eventually, some of them will become professors. So I do appreciate what you're doing. But what is urgently needed is more of the system surrounding the faculty. So I want to know your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much for the question. I will make you feel better right away. It has been a struggle to even keep this program within our own institution. Often deans do not understand why the university gives money to this program. So every year we have to present the projects the students have done, but we also have surveyed our students. After 10 years of program, we did a full survey of all the alumni and presented the data back to professors to show how valuable this was. And we also brought professors into the semester program as thought leaders. And I think they very much enjoy the dialogue with us from different fields and faculties and the very pertinent questions they ask. So I think it is almost not so much as presenting the idea to them, but to bring them into the experience so they can live it for themselves. I actually think most professors I have met over the course of my career are also interested in defragmenting. And they have a tendency to enjoy when there's opportunities to be in interdisciplinary conversations. We all learn so much from our colleagues in different fields. So I think it's more about institutions having the leadership to propose programs like this and also to invite professors in to propose their own approaches. I think we would be surprised at how many professors would like to do more interdisciplinary work or more community engaged work, especially when it comes to working with indigenous communities or local communities and knowledge. I think we have so many professors who are pretty restricted by their own institutions. And if we have strong leadership that can offer an opportunity for professors to do that, I think we will see a lot more fragmentation.
That's excellent. Really happy to hear the success stories of the struggle. Okay, so now I would like to ask anyone help monitor the questions. We assume, is there any questions online? I mean, okay. So just want to check again, come back, final round. Anyone would like to ask the panel? Okay, so please introduce yourself first.
Thank you so much. Really great to listen to this conversation. My name is Solomon. I'm a student here at Chulalongkorn University. I like working with young people. The leader of young people here back in Kenya. But sometimes you find that there are young people not in education. You're working with young people in education. And sometimes the indigenous communities are comprised of adults. And the young people, perhaps, they are not in education, they're nowhere in the school, university, but even when you go back to the community, they're not there. But then the future, how do you navigate through this to ensure that they're also involved in this so that the work is carried forward?
So you ask Elodie or local person?
Both of them.
Both of
Because they
them.
work with young people.
Okay, let me have you bless a little bit. So I would like to request Dr. Pasang to respond to someone's question.
Yeah, thank you, Simon, for your very in-depth observations. How we connect the indigenous children in the educations work in in the communities. So I personally a teacher also. I work in the research center, but I have been in my whole life I have been teaching. So since I finished my masters, I have been teaching and teaching and teaching for full time earlier, but now I'm a visiting faculty in Kafan University. And also just to share one thought that, we have been putting all our efforts, how we connect our values, right? I already shared. And another part, we have been putting our efforts that how we can connect our roots through indigenous education systems. The education they have been learning at home, in the society, in the community, how we can make it, mainstream, not in a mainstream way that, they will come to a continuation of this business as usual model of educations where small space for indigenous values, but also how we can balance the indigenous knowledge system and the science along with that, and bringing the knowledge from the roots, from the ground, and the community. And back to your community, we have been also putting our efforts for connecting indigenous children, indigenous, non-indigenous children, and also connecting with our local curriculum. That is, I really believe working in the education sector for many years now, I really feel mainstream education sometimes more inviting unsustainable future, but the linking with our roots and linking with our indigenous way of life brings more balanced way that you will have option. Like for example, some people ask me, oh, now we have an inflation, what to do? You will lose your job. But I believe we go back to your communities. There's no problem. You have your lands, you have your resources, so there's no any kind of alarm for us to face. But that values, connecting your roots, going back to your communities, and building that confidence of your continuation of your survival strategy, we are losing in our modern education. So we should be very proud to see our children that at least they are connecting to our roots, they are continuing their traditional practice, and that is more sustainable. And now we need to connect with them also, exposed to the modern, but modern to the local. So it's connection of this two way of education and balanced way education is the only future we have ahead. So yeah, I hope I responded your question, but more we can talk later. Yeah.
Thank you. So now Elodie.
Thank you, Solomon, for that question. One thing we have tried to introduce in Canada is called the two-eye way of seeing. So one eye is the academic eye way of seeing, but the other eye is how traditional people's science. We tend to separate science that is done in university and the actual traditional science of peoples and communities. And we know, for example, in the north where I have worked a lot, that when it comes to monitoring the effects of climate change on certain animals, species, and biodiversity, we have to work with the elders that are in those communities. Most of them have never been to school, but because they have those values, that connection to the land, their faculty of observation of change is much higher than your average PhD student who has never been on that land. It's not connected to it in any way. So I think it's not an either or. We have to bring all types of knowledge together. So knowledge in universities is very useful, but so is the knowledge held by older people in indigenous communities and small rural areas. They know how to observe the land so well. And as Pasang said, they have many of the answers already. How do you navigate flood changes? So for example, many communities who live along rivers, they have adapted to the change of the river for centuries. So they already have traditional techniques to do that. We have ignored them for too long. So I think it's bringing this knowledge back and connecting it that will help us survive.
Thank you. I think that's really excellent. So I actually have many points, but let us really see the time because our time is running out. And thank you so much for two speakers in this time round. Now I'd like to invite Ajahn Apiwat Watanawalaha. I'm not sure is he's online now. Yeah. So
I'm here.
yes. So please, you have 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chen. All right, greetings from Kyoto, actually. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel. Even though I'm enjoying the beautiful air in Kyoto at the moment, in addition to the cherry blossom, the map that I'm showing in the back is showing the situation in Southeast Asia at the moment. And we know, I don't know how bad it is right now in Bangkok, but in my hometown in Chiang Mai, and as well as Chiang Rai up north, the situation of resources is terrible. And you can see the effect of how we have exploited and damaged our common resources. So that's the theme that I would like to share with you today. When I think of resource governance, I think of two issues that I think are really important for us to consider in this contemporary world. One is the fact that it's a wicked problem. Resources issues are very complex. It involves so many different issues from livelihoods to natural resources to climate change to community development. So many issues are intertwined when we think about resources. And in addition, as the background, the background shows, it involves different countries. So it goes beyond one administrative political boundary. When we think of resource governance, it's definitely, to me, it's a wicked problem that cannot be solved easily. So that's one. Another one that I think is important when we think about resource governance is the issue of structure. And it could be in terms of political structure, institutional structure, but we know that we cannot solve it with just incremental improvement of technologies or improvement of technical solutions. Resource issues do involve dealing with some foundational structural issues, in various aspects, which leads to one keyword that I think we have to really consider when we think about resource governance, which is about distribution. And the distribution of resources is not just about distribution of ownership of resources, but also the access to it. as well as the risks and the negative effects of ownership and usage of resources. And we know that the distribution of resources, both the positive side and the negative side, are the distribution is never, at least is never equal. So the issue of resource governance, or at least the objective of resource governance, has to deal somewhat somehow deal with justice issue. So we have all these sort of keywords, right? The wicked problems, structural obstacles, and justice and fair distribution of the resources. How do we deal with this? And I think futures literacy and foresight help in various ways. First, it's related to the positive aspect of futures literacy. Positive as in to figure out what's really going on in terms of fact, in terms of science. So future literacy somewhat has to deal with monitoring the trends and analyzing the trends. So we do need the methods to analyze and monitor the trends and the current situation that's going on. But at the same time, we also have to think into the future. That's why futures literacy is always with an S, because we know that there are possibilities of futures. There's no one single future. There are many different interpretations and expectations of what could happen, which means we have to come up with scenarios, alternative futures. And I think by using futures related methodologies, we're able to come up with different scenarios that we can think about and try to sort of understand the wicked problems and the structural obstacles a little better by thinking the futures of resource governance in scenario ways. The third part of futures literacy, and I think and other foresight methodologies, is the third part is about the normative aspirational aspect of it. And I think because we are faced with structural issues, a lot of times we face with, say, for example, very powerful corporations that that dominate the resource access and ownership. So these structural obstacles require some reimagination. Before we engage in any political or advocacy action, we always have to have some sort of normative aspirational picture in mind. And in this particular case about resource governance, we do need to reimagine the world. For example, Southeast Asia without all those red dots, for example, right? We have to reimagine that, not just as a guidance for us to move forward to, but also in a lot of ways, I think it gives us a little bit of hope of what we could potentially do. So futures literacy to me is not just about thinking about or monitoring the trends and come up with scientific scenarios, but it also gives us some narrative power to imagine a better world. Because of that, we will be able to engage in more powerful political advocacy. And I think, to me, so that's the second part of my message here, that we need to use future literacies and methodologies beyond just analyzing the current situation, but need to use that as a more powerful way to engage politically. So how do we engage the resource governance with the futures literacy methodologies and approach? When it comes to resources, I think there are many different aspects of resources. One could think about the air back here, PM 2.5. That's one type of resource. Water that Ajahn Carl and his colleagues have been working on, transboundary, issues and all that. That's natural resource. And for me, as an urban planner, working in the field of spatial planning a little bit, we need to deal with civic resources. For example, transit system, public parks, that kind of thing. I think the way we need to think about the future of resource governance rests upon the concept of commons. We need to reconceptualize what we mean by commons and use the method and concept of futures literacy to think about the futures of the commons. And I would like to stop here. I don't want to spend too much time by saying that as a practitioner and in the academia myself, I think we have to think of information and knowledge as a type of common as well, because without information and knowledge as common, we wouldn't be able to mobilize natural resources and civic resources as commons. So these air, water, public space, they're all related to how we think of knowledge as commons. So yeah, let me stop there, and perhaps we can exchange a little more about how futures literacy can help reimagine better commons for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Apiwat. So we already see the real and concrete examples of the partnership and working together. So Ajahn Apiwat is actually working for Chulalongkorn University, but he's now talking from Japan. And we already see that that's already probably some knowledge exchange, and the knowledge is really our commons, as you mentioned, and he kindly shared his view on the situation here and highlighting maybe the possible foresights, futures, visioning, methodologies, and the things we could work together. And I think that's really an important point for us to have that type of the kind of methodology and structuration beyond really thinking, analyzing just what is happening now. So thank you very much for that. Now we come to the last but not least. So we have Professor Yuto Kitamura. He will talk about his view on these issues and any recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Dr. James. I'm glad you are alumni of this. And I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to Sujai, also and then also our colleagues at the Chulalongkorn University for being given this precious opportunities. And then I'm here to personally represent our university, and also the JASID, Japan Society for International Development Studies. Actually, Professor Shin Sato, who just made a comment previously, he is the president of our society, and then I'm a chair of the committee for the global engagement society, and we have been closely working with Chulalongkorn University. So I'm very honored to be here. I now like to share some of my thoughts on this topic, and I was told to interpret in my own way about the topic. So let me share what I thought. So this is the title of the presentation. Then I really like to use the concept of managed diplomacy to discuss about this issue.
Maybe someone can help say, yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm trying to discuss about the plurality of the futures. So futures literacy, of course, in need to cultivate literacy to foresee the multiple different futures, but also I'd like to emphasize that we need to cultivate literacy in the plural manner, because as one of our previous speakers already discussed, for the resource governance, we need the knowledge and expertise from the various different fields. Single literacy cannot really deal with. So we really have to think of the multiplicity of the or plurality of the literacies. And in order to cultivate such literacies, we can do to some extent our own institutions, for instance. Some of the university has a wonderful program to do so, but at the same time, single institution can do in very limited manner as well. So we really have to collaborate, particularly across the borders. Maybe try right. Okay, so next slide, please. So next slide, please. Thank you. So now we really need to collaborate across the borders to really cultivate the sense of literacies among the young people, particularly at the higher education institutions. And here we see the two kind of different phenomena that influence the globalizations. We can now easily be connected across the borders, but by doing so, sometimes people try to compete each other rather than collaborate. But what I want to emphasize here is the more of the collaboration operations. So next slide, please. So internationalization of higher, no, that's okay. Internationalization of higher education is very important for us today. We really need to work together to go next slide, please. And for this, how we work together, then there's one important question about the quality assurance. We really have to assure the quality of the educational programs when we work together across the borders. So that's one of the topics we have been facing today. How to ensure the quality of the programs we create across the borders. To go to the next slide, please. And this is not only the interest of our region, but actually the Europe has been leading this topic, and they have already made certain accomplishment in this manner. Next slide, please. In East Asia, or when I say East Asia, that is actually the Northeast and the Southeast. And then actually we are also trying to collaborate with South Asia as well. So I should just say Asian context. In Asian context, somewhat very different from the European context. Why? Because we have such a diversity in this region. So the cross-border collaboration is not that easy. We can simply think of, should go next slide, please. So also, what we are facing today is that there are a lot of data we have, but we don't have to really share the framework to collaborate across the borders among the universities in this region. Could you go next slide, please? And what is happening today, this is just maybe a bit difficult to see, but this shows last 20 years how many students actually move across the regions, but also within the regions. And we see the significant increase of the number of students moving across the borders within the region, within Asia. I mean, of course, many students still go to Europe and North America and Oceania, but also, they are moving between ASEAN and Japan, China, Korea, and this region. So please, could you go to the next slide, please? When we talk about this kind of internationalizations, the most known concept is a soft power concept proposed by JASID and the power. I have been feeling quite dynamic, quite strangely about this concept of soft power, because when we use the word power, that actually imply us to compete each other and try to, promote more hegemony over the other. So if you go next slide, please. So that's why I like to share this concept of knowledge diplomacy here today. This is actually the concept very much highlighted by the Professor Jen Knight of the University of Toronto. We have been collaborating for the last 7-8 years, and then this concept of knowledge diplomacy is to try to think of how to share the common goods of for humanity, which is the knowledge we produce. So here, how we can create more harmony rather than competitions or hegemony. So if you go next slide, please. There are 4 pillars of knowledge diplomacy. I mean, we can skip here. Then, if you go next slide, please. So by promoting this, we expect the students to become future diplomats, to share their knowledge, generated in the various different parts of the world. And then, this is a way to promote cross-cultural understanding. And then next slide, please. And by doing this, we can really try to avoid the kind of the rise of the nationalism as well, because we really educate the young people to become a knowledge diplomats, and then let's try to share the knowledge amongst them. Could you go next slide, please? So for doing this, we really need regional harmonizations. But next slide, please. How we can create such a regional harmonizations? Then we have to raise the question about the conventional model of international corporations. I see, particularly in the field of education, we see 2 different types of international cooperation. One is intellectual exchange, which have been normally done between the universities with a more equal partnership, while there is a lot of international development assistance provided by the government and other sectors, other actors. We should go next slide, please. But the conventional model of international cooperation can be seen as in this model, like some partners, like for instance, universities in North America, Europe, they give more to the university in the global south, while the universities in the global south receive more from the global north. This is very true, and we actually heard already this session that there are values and importance of the indigenous knowledge and traditional wisdom. So we shouldn't stick with this kind of model anymore. So we should go next slide, please. So that's why I like to propose a new concept, intellectual development cooperation, which is a more equal partnership between the universities in the different parts of the world, no matter whether they are in the global south or the global north. Then we see some efforts to promote such new type of international development cooperation. For instance, in Japan, we have the so-called SATREX. Could you go next slide, please? Could you go next? I will skip some slides. Go next slide, please. Next slide, please. And for instance, SATREX, this is an effort to encourage universities in Japan and also in developing countries in the global south to collaborate. And then because the scholars in the global south knows more about the context, while the Japanese scholars may provide more first-hand scientific knowledge. So, but they must go together. And then based on their knowledge, we can provide development assistance. We should go next slide, please. So this kind of, work between the academia in the global south and global north has to be encouraged more. And then we should go next slide, please. So this is my response. I didn't know that our Madam Chair asked the question, but this is my response to her question. this is one example of our efforts between the Chulalongkorn University and JASID. Try to share our knowledge by organizing the workshop, and also, possibly we can think of the future research together as well, because we really need to generate knowledge in and from Asia. So which means, we are not just generating the knowledge here, but also we like to share the knowledge within Asia, but also within the region, beyond Asia. So that's what we should do. And then this is a good example of knowledge diplomacy. I like to emphasize in my talk today. So I hope this makes some sense to you. Thank you very much for this special opportunity.
Thank you very much. Really on point. And even you did not know the questions, I'm actually have a request to all speakers, but the last slide is really summarize what you feel in terms of the role and also how we can cooperate together. And I really see is that we can see how hard work and also passion to this cooperation of Professor Yuto Kitamura from the number of slides he has prepared and how punctual in terms of the time he want to keep in 12 minutes. I have just small request. Would it be possible to share the slide with the participant also? Okay, yeah. In case anyone not be able to capture all points there, so feel free to access to the slide later on and write to Professor Yuto Kitamura afterwards. But I really see a lot of key message we want to deliver here. That the knowledge diplomacy is probably the key for the futures. And now I just feel so much sympathized and actually really feel, oh, now we expect the student to be cultural and so knowledge diplomat. So, and we like them to learn across the sectors and do this or that. So how we can really help them to do all of these expectations from the professor and also senior or adult like us to expect them. So we really need to work together to be able to do that. Now the final round of the floor is open. So if anyone would like to ask two previous recent speakers, so I like to give the priority for them first. Yes, let me one and anyone else two. Okay, anyone online, could you help check? No, online. Okay, so please, can you introduce yourself first?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Yayo Lagerqvist, and I come from Sweden, actually. I'm actually participating in international conference of the UN Conference Center this week, Asia Pacific Forum for the Sustainable Development. And I work with this organization called Swedwatch in Stockholm, which focuses on business and human rights and environment. My questions for the last two speakers, particularly, is regarding putting knowledge into action. A lot of the issues highlighted during this morning's panel is about addressing structural issues, and we need knowledge from various parts of the society, not just from the universities, but also. And so how do you actually put knowledge into action? And I believe that future literacies is meant to be more fluid and agile and also open and engaging with communities, in indigenous peoples and local communities shouldn't be an afterthought. A lot of the collaborations that's been discussed during this morning's talk seems to be still focused around university to university collaborations. And that's fine, but I do think that it needs to be more open and agile. And so that the knowledge actually contributes to addressing the challenging problems that are facing today. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And then we have other. So would you like to ask first? Yeah, and then I like to invite the speakers to respond to both. Yes, please, can you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm from Indonesia, affiliated to Chulalongkorn University. So my questions for both Ajahn Apiwat and Professor Kitamura. I'm not going to talk knowledge or education system as something like working in silo or working in a bubble. So we talk about knowledge, we talk also about politics of knowledge, let's say. So I would like to emphasize when you talk about resource, the rights of use, the right to access, and also soft power, and also knowledge diplomacy. And also you said that, especially Professor Kitamura talking about common goods for humanity, but we also see that knowledge also have two polars, which is scientific knowledge and indigenous knowledge at the same time. So I'm wondering how we can address the issue of how we acknowledge properly indigenous or local knowledge to be seen more visibly on the table. Because when we see current situations that there are so many cases of biopiracy, for example, the pharmaceutical companies, they acknowledge that this knowledge belongs to the scientific knowledge, quote unquote. But in fact, that knowledge is coming from indigenous knowledge or local knowledge or situated knowledge, whatever it's called. So how we can situate that kind of situations and also finding win-win solution between the so-called scientific knowledge and indigenous knowledge to be more in harmony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This is really excellent questions and not easy one. So we have the question on how to put knowledge in action, and another how we can address properly and acknowledge the indigenous knowledge more explicitly for solutions. So I like to invite, I don't know, Ajahn Apiwat, would you like to start first? And then Professor Yuto Kitamura.
Sure. I mean, those are really difficult questions, right? I think really tough one. But let me take the first one on how we can go beyond just knowledge generation into action. In fact, I think this could address the second question as well in terms of the politics of knowledge and the, I guess, what we can call the cognitive justice when it comes to knowledge sharing. Personally, I've tried to work in initiatives related to citizen science. So citizen science is one approach that we try to work with, not just with, but yeah, basically, we don't think of science as something that is owned by just experts in the labs or even researchers like us. But science is more the method and the way we think about how we can get to the fact and get to possibly the truth. So citizen science is a way that we can translate the knowledge from different parts of society into action, not because knowledge itself is good for journal publication, but knowledge is the fundamental factor in solving concrete issues. So concretely, I think citizen science is one approach that could possibly expand the concept of knowledge beyond the boundary of academia and involve actual action of different groups of people. Now, it may not address right away the structural issues of politics because we know that people who own resources and own the knowledge would want to keep the resources and the knowledge to themselves. But then that's why futures literacy, I think, is important, because you need to start from the situation, from the imagination that we could have some fair distribution of resources and knowledge. We could have better or more equal society. Without that imagination, without that hope that things could be better, I don't think we can engage politically. So I guess I'm trying to answer both questions. We need to expand the concept of knowledge generation beyond the academia by engaging people directly in the field. Now, in my field of urban planning and urban development, we do involve our students with actual clients a little more. We used to have only studios within the boundary of the university and hypothetical cases and hypothetical clients. But now I think we are going beyond that. We try to engage more with real stakeholders. And I hope this way we can go beyond the knowledge generation and creation in the academia and involve young people in the actual problem solving on the ground. So that's my first response to both questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Apiwat. So I think that's really excellent to address two questions in one go, and highlighting the role of and possibility to use citizen science to really break the boundary, the knowledge, and also the practice. So now, Dr. Yuto Tamara, so can you please respond to the question?
Thank you very much for the very fundamental, important questions. I really agree with Ajahn Apiwat. This is a very challenging and difficult questions to respond. But for the first question, yes, how we can put knowledge into actions. Then we really have to think of the importance of promoting transdisciplinary research. When we use the word transdisciplinary, trans stands for the transversality of involving the different stakeholders from the beginning of the research. So we cannot just, the researchers cannot, scientists cannot monopolize the knowledge. They have to really share from the beginning, and then how to involve the various different stakeholders in research is the key. I mean, one of the keys to really put knowledge to actions, because otherwise, knowledge can be purely exist as a product among the scientists. So that's a very simple answer I have so far, but we really need to discuss more on this. Second question, yes, that's also very important, because this concept of knowledge diplomacy was first taken up in the field of international relations in the 1990s to discuss about the issue of the intellectual property rights. But at that time, the knowledge was only seen as goods in plural, okay, goods. But for us today, when we see the knowledge, we have to see the knowledge not as common goods, but also common goods based on common good in singular manner, which means that this cannot be just like knowledge cannot be treated as like a commodity. Knowledge has to be common goods based on the common good for humanities. So that your example is a very important example. How we see those kind of traditional medicine. So we really have to understand the context of this. I mean, before people just saw these kind of issues as just the knowledge as a commodities. So they didn't pay attention. But today, I think it's becoming better than before. Of course, I'm not really saying that those pharmaceutical companies are doing good now. I mean, they still have problems. I should admit. But at the same time, they start becoming a bit more sensitive than before. So because of the common good, people started sharing now. And then I feel like SDGs become a kind of catalytic moment to start for people start sharing this kind of ideas. So of course, we really have to be careful about the treatment of the knowledge particularly in this context. I hope I'm responding your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I look at the time. I see that both Ajahn Piwat and also Professor Yuto Kitamura trying to address actually not only their problem and questions, they're trying to really offer some suggestion to the world questions. And that world question can be not be solved within 5 minutes. And now we already 10 minutes over the time. I really feel we have really rich discussions and also knowledge exchange among the members in the panel and also the participants in the room. I feel so much learning from these sessions starting from Irodi. She really talked about the kinship model. And I really fascinated by this concept and examples she made, especially when she said that the project has been questioned by the dean and professor. And after 10 years survey, that show really the change, maybe not really big change physically, but the change in people thinking and the student reflections that really pointing out that it's important for us to continue what we have passions, we have to be persistent. And that's really reflecting in a talk by Dr. Pasang when she mentioned about really the need to incorporate the knowledge of indigenous people and local communities, women and other groups in the discussions at the global level, and have to really come back to see what is really local actions and the change on ground. We still have a lot of things to pursue in the futures, and that's why this type of partnership, even many of us here are more or less work on research and education system, but I could see really deep understanding on a complex issue as highlighted by Dr. Apiwat, that the issue of resources governance is not really the different sectors, waters, energy, food, and climate, but also the politics behind it, the governance as well of different countries. We work here and he showed really red map, the many dot points there, showing example of the issue of PM 2.5, that it has to be solved and addressed not only for individual level or civil like communities or the country, but this is really global problems. And that's the things that Professor Yuto Kitamura has been proposing, that we should use the knowledge diplomacy as a maybe mechanisms for us to really work across the borders and having harmonizations on this and have the good expectations on the students to play the role as a cultural diplomat or knowledge diplomat. And we have to really continue working on this together. It's not really easy for us, for academia or research group, to work across our own border. Even the professors need to have some encouragement and really the capacities to support the system of universities or even education system should allow them and encourage them to work towards this direction. And I see that really many partners here reflecting from the speakers, all speakers from many countries here, highlighting the important role of Chulalongkorn University to really lead this process and in collaboration, making the partnership happen, not only within the academic group, but also extend the collaboration and the partnership to other groups in the society who have common interests in more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable resource governance for the benefit of people in the world. So with this, I would like to really convey my big thanks, especially for all 4 speakers to join this panel. Elodie and Dr. Pasang and Ajahn Apiwat online, and Professor Yuto Kitamura for joining this morning the panel discussion, and also all the participants on site and also online who post the questions and also pay attention to this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all the speakers and Dr. Chinese for a very nice wrap up. So now we'd like to take a short break. would like to take maybe 15 minutes. Then we come back at 11:10. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think everyone had a nice cup of coffee, juice, and some snack, and ready to start in the next section of our public forum. Thank you very much. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you again for joining the launch public forum of Chulalongkorn University's UNESCO Chair for Resource Governance and Futures Literacy. It is my pleasure to invite Assistant Professor Dr. Sutira Kitipong-Vise. Okay, I see you now to chair the session. Dr. Sutira is a Director of Environment, Development and Sustainability Program and a lecturer at the Environmental Research Institute, Chulalongkorn University. Dr. Sutira is joined by Professor Surijai Bhuge, Professor Emeritus of Sociology, Chair of Thailand's UNESCO Management of Social Transformation Program, or in short, UNESCO MOST. And he's the Vice President of the Intergovernmental Council of MOST for Asia and the Pacific region. Jan Sutirat, the floor is yours.
Okay, nice to meet you all, and welcome to the second two for the reflections on the Chulalongkorn University UNESCO Chair in the Resources, Governance and Future Literacy. Once again, I'm Assistant Professor Sutira Kitipong-Vise from Chulalongkorn University. I will be here as the section chair together with Professor Surijai Bhuge. And I think in the earlier section, we have learned so far about the challenges, the way toward the future literacy, even as the significant the opportunities for driving the future literacy in the sustainable way. And this is time for section 2. We want to hear from our keynote speaker as the reflection on the way forward, the future literacy and the resource governance. So please allow me to introduce our keynote speaker. Right now, you can see keynote speaker in these four. First, including Associate Professor Dr. Narumon Arunothai from Social Research Institute, Chulalongkorn University. And the second professor, Associate Professor Kanokwan Manolom, the Director of Mekong Sub-Region Social Research Center, Ubon Ratchathani University. And last but not least, Ajahn Carl, Assistant Professor Dr. Carl Middleton, the Director of the Center for Social Development Studies, Faculties of the Political Science, Chulalongkorn University. So we can start up the reflections. So after our speaker give the reflection, share some ideas on this topic, we will give you a chance to ask some question, discussion, even as the open for the opportunities that you want to share from the speaker or from the participant in this class. Okay, first start up for Professor Narumon Arunothai, for is your.
Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to congratulate UNESCO Chair on Resources Governance and Future Literacy. And I think we're happy to hear this morning's session as well, the reflection. So this is continuation of reflection. I think we need to look back on the understanding and interpretation of some words, which are key words in the document of the chair on resource governance. Working with IPs, I can relate to Pasang's statement this morning and also Elodie's referring to indigenous people in Canada. I think working with indigenous people, I have the privilege of seeing through different views, different lenses. And I think some of you already wrote thesis or dissertation on ontologies. And I think in this room, we understand ontology, and sometimes we put S in ontologies. And please be reminded that because future is also with S. So we are talking about plurality. But how can we convey this concept of ontologies, multiple ontologies, to policymakers and other in different disciplines? I think that needs some reflection and that needs some interpretation. So I would also reflect on the three main keywords, which is one is governance, the second is futures, and the third one is social and ecological justice, probably from the lenses of indigenous people and working closely with indigenous issues. Actually, I'd like to call myself field worker and practitioner more than professor because I spent more time in the field than in the classroom and in my office. First, with governance, I think we also talk about resource governance, and I'm happy that Mr. Kitamura mentioned about human resource as well. It's not only natural resources. So when we think about resource governance, and when we take class like natural resource management, we think about the management part. We think about the control, managerial guidelines of this. But like Ajahn Abhiwat mentioned that when we talk about ecology, we talk about environmental system, it's really complex, it's interconnectedness. So what we can do is to simplify it. We need to put it in compartmentalization or fragmented. I think that's why this morning we talk about how to integrate instead of fragments, but in the real world when everything is interconnected and complex. This is the way to simplify it and to take a closer look to be able to analyze it. So I think that's the effort that we are doing. But then if we extend the definition of governance to include this customary governance, the governance by other people by different viewpoints, vis-a-vis state governance, probably we have a broader horizon. Because we see that in several countries, custodian by indigenous people are looked at as not systematic way. So that's why we have state governance, and usually state governance might become environmental fascism, meaning that you put the emphasis on fortress conservation, doing the boundary for protected area and have rules and regulation and guidelines. This is neglecting the human resource and capacity of indigenous people. And I think many of us are used to the concept of Ostrom, right? That institutionalization and then governance by the local people is also effective. But if we have top-down, state-owned, we talk about ownership, we talk about the common, but if state-owned, meaning that we exclude a lot of people while we like to put the emphasis on plurality. Ajahn Abhiwat talk about distribution of owning and accessing. And when I work among the Karen community in the forest, the Karen would like to have private ownership. They said they would like to keep things in common, in communality. But the opposite way, the state-run and top-down government policy would like to have private ownership because it's easy to manage. It's easy to control or identify people who will be responsible or take benefit from that. So I think this is really a tension, especially in Thailand context. And I believe that in other countries like Pasang from Nepal, you have the similar situation with rotational farming where, the indigenous people wouldn't like to own. They just want to access and they want to take care of, like the Australian Aborigines talk about caring for the country. So they use with care. But if we exclude them or if we disconnect them from the land and the sea, because I work with the people of the sea, so we are neglecting this form of governance as well. So that's why I'd like to put the emphasis on redefining, reinterpreting, and reconsidering governance, that it might have many forms. The second word or key term that needs redefining is future. And of course, we put the plurality of the futures. And I think Ajahn Abhiwat also put the emphasis on this, especially in Thailand context. That's why when we talk about futures literacy,
It's always with S. And maybe we urban people, middle class people are not very good with crisis because we don't have narratives of crisis and how to deal with crisis. But if we look at indigenous people's tale and stories, that's usually the message about the future. If there's to be crisis in the future, how do we deal with it? Or how do we deal with it in the term of collectivity, not individuality? Whereas, the present world, when we think about the crisis, we think about who could survive, by what. And definitely those who have more means and more resources usually survive. But indigenous people talk about crisis in the future. How do we survive together? For the Morgan, for the Chaole, for the Sea people that I work with, they talk about the lagoon, the tsunami, and how we can survive together if we know where to put the settlement, where to run for if we have water receded. So I think these stories and tales are not just stories. They have messages embedded in this, but then we neglect it. And we put the formal education in school, and then we put these indigenous students in school. So they learn about centralized courses, curriculum, and they gradually forget about the tales and the key messages put or embedded in the tale. So the Morgan, the Sea people, they have the tale of 7 waves about tsunami. The Karen, they have the story about crisis in the future, that people have to hold on to rice. That's why for Karen, rice and rotational farming is very important. And the government, especially the Department of National Park, didn't realize this because they have the textbook and then the concepts from other parts of the world. So rotational farming is practically banned and seen as deforestation. So this is really sad. And there's detail, there are research reports and projects about this. But then somebody said something about mindset this morning. I think it's very important for changing mindset, paradigm shift. It's not easy when you have really established institutionalized management by the government to have this paradigm shift. I just came back to the field just yesterday, and while we had a tent near the stream in the Karen village, some of the Karen people in the community went into the forest and to the mountain to build forest buffer. As you know, Ajahn Apiwat already showed you some red spots in Thailand. There are a lot of wildfire now occurring. And the indigenous people, they know the forest so well, and they know where to build the buffer line. So they went in the forest, they spent hours in the forest and came back really late at night. So they do take care of their forest, and we need to look at this aspect of them being custodian of the environment. I think Ajahn Kal and being the chair on resource governance will think about the connectivity between water, food, energy. But how do we acquire and provide these in an inclusive manner? One of the community I work with, there's an issue of building reservoir. Reservoir is good, for irrigation to bring more water for other people. But then where is the balance? Where is the rights of indigenous community if they need to be removed or resettled to another land? And then we can't be guaranteed whether the reservoir or that the dam will provide the water. And that we need to consider that we look at the water aspect of natural resource only. We don't look at the ecology or living or beings within the water. Another point is that we should look at the deeper sense of the 2 terms, lifestyles, vis-a-vis livelihoods and survival. Because right now, I think especially middle class urban people, we look at the term lifestyle. We now know lifestyle product, lifestyle building, something like this. It's more of a luxury, whereas the indigenous people and local community, what they live day by day is on survival. So I think there should be a distinction between these two, when we need to weigh between the development
development for who is always the good question. I think we all in this room are middle class, maybe mostly urban people. So this is middle class centric world. Vis-a-vis alternative imaginaries that we think about futures. So when we think for other people, other groups, we think through our own vision. That's why plurality is very important. That's why listening to other voices, especially protesting voices, people who sit in the in front of the parliament, or people, rural people to come, we shouldn't look at them, as being burdened or causing traffic jam. They are trying to convey some message, and we need to pay attention. Okay, so imagining the new futures and future literacy, because I think many people, when they talk about future literacy, many think about living in space, many think about new technology, many think about innovation. But then when we talk about social and cultural innovation, what aspect should it be? So the third key term is social and ecological justice. And I would like to add cultural recognition and respect, because I think that's based on what I see each time I went to the field. This morning we talk about the program where the graduate students can join, and learn in real life in the field. And there's a keen question from Professor Jin Sato. I think this is good opportunity. We bring students in the field and they have direct questions, and we professors learn from them. There's example of we bring the engineering and social science students in the field of the community affected by lead mining. And right now, Triti is the name of the community. I think many of you know, and actually EDS and probably made students did the thesis and dissertation on that. The engineering student asked, why do we need to spend 600 million baht to clean the stream? Why don't we resettle the people? Something like that, the straightforward question from the student, the innocent question is really good, because it makes us think, and there's a cross-cultural and cross-discipline conversation, and we professors, and lecturers who have to read, need to think about that as well. So I think it's a good opportunity for the students, and also if we ask the professors to join, we can think in a different way, in an alternative way. And I think lastly, on behalf of Social Research Institute, we'll be happy to work with this UNESCO chair, because right now we are doing a project on NEA, National Ecosystem Assessment, also funded by UNESCO. If we think about National Ecosystem Assessment, we think about scientists, right, doing the assessment. But with the joining of UNESCO talk about ILK, indigenous and local knowledge, and IPLC, indigenous people and local community. So that aspect is very important in the assessment because we get the funding and support from UNESCO. So I'm really happy to be part of the panel, and then I congratulate the chair of the resource governance. That's fine.
Thank you for the reflection from Ajahn Narumon. Maybe we can learn from you, maybe 2 many points. First is about the governance. You mentioned about the interconnected storyline. The second, you mentioned about futures. I have to say yes, maybe some kind like the plurality about this one. You mentioned about the message about crisis from all stakeholders, including the indigenous people. Last but not least, you mentioned about the socio-ecological justice, and you mentioned about the cultural recognition and respect. This is something I can keep as some highlight the concise discussion. So for the second speaker, Professor Kanokwan, this is your turn to give some reflection to the audience in this section, please.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Susirat. And also thank you very much, Ajahn Surishoy and Ajahn Carl, for inviting me to join the launch of Chulalongkorn University UNESCO Chair on Resource Governance and Future Literacy.
quite long position. And can congratulate Chulalongkorn University for doing a great job. And I think my skills really to cooperate with this initiative. And also, I enjoy so much listening to the presentations from the previous session. I learned a lot, and I came up with the term. Everyone talks about knowledge. I think everyone talks about the marginalized group of people, particularly the indigenous people. And everyone talking about how we're gonna share the idea, the concept, and the knowledge and experience in order to move ahead together in the sustainable way. So I just got back from the field again, as you. So you saw my photo, my student took a photo. I went with villagers who've been affected by Sayabuli dams in Ubon Ratchathani province. We collected data because citizen science. We did the research together with local people and also the people from international organization. The lady who asked the question from Swedwatch, and we collected plants, indigenous knowledge on plants along the Mekong. And we found a lot of plants, medicinal and other plants related to the ecological system of the Mekong. It's very interesting. Can you go to the next slide? So my reflection on Chulalongkorn University UNESCO, I would like to focus on the resource governance. Based on my experience working on women issues and environment issue, and also the marginalized people being affected by the dam. For example, the dam that already built 30 years ago, Pakin Dam, and the current dam, the Sayabuli Dam, and the future dam, the Ban Kun Dam, is going to be built very soon in the area. So talking about the past, the present, and also the future. In order to understand the future literacy, you have to understand what's happening, what has been happening in the past, and what's the people think about the dam at this moment, and how the dams affecting their life, and how they see their future from their perspective and also my perspective. And resource governance means 4 things from my experience. The first one, agency. So if we would like to use the knowledge in order to amplify the marginalized and women, the children, the girls and boys in the village, and how we use the most effective language in order to articulate these people's minds, these people's perspective, and how they include them in the policy level. And the second one, access. I think the marginalized people, including males, female, boys and girls, the young and old in the village or in any community, should be part of the policy decision making, particularly on hydropower, on energy sector, on any large scale infrastructure development projects. But we need to also understand the norm and social value of the people. Why those people are not always included in the policy level? Perhaps because of power relation, because perhaps about growth orientation, perhaps about prosperity, economic growth that the government try to achieve, rather than taking into account the voice and the knowledge of local people into the process of decision making. And the last one, we need to revise the structure. What does it mean by structure? It means policy, regulation, and laws, allowing local people to put in place, to voice their concern, their problem, their knowledge, their experience, and count them as part of the key component when we make a decision on any hydropower next. And this photo, I like it because we share the knowledge. Not only myself, I know nothing about the plant, but local people, they know so well. And the agronomists who came with us also know so well. It's a kind of multiple perspective on particular small plant and grown along the Mekong bank. We need to legitimize this knowledge and scale up their knowledge into the national, technocrat system
and address the complex of problem of resource utilization. What does it mean by this? We need to articulate, we need to activate, we need to collect the data. Not just us as academic who sitting in the air conditioning room, but also the people who now struggling themselves to overcome the problem of Sayaburi Dam and other dams, or even the dam that already constructed 30 years ago. They still have a traumatization. They still have a problem. The traumatization still accumulated over time, over the past 30 years. How are we going to cope with that? How are we going to take that as starting point in order to see the future together, how their future is going to be like? And we need science policy forum. I think Chulalongkorn is good at this, organizing science policy forum. We need more on this. We have to work harder. I heard someone talk this morning. We have to work harder. What does it mean by harder? It means we need to put together energy, knowledge, everything, resources, everything together in order to express the needs of the people, particularly the disadvantaged who've been affected by the large-scale different projects. Next. And we are living in the uncertain situation. We can't predict what's going to happen sometimes. Even we have scientific knowledge, even we have a lot of scientists around Thailand and around the world. You see COVID, you see another pandemic. We never expected that before, but now we got there. So we are living in a such uncertain world. We need a broad spectrum of interest more than ever. So we need many groups of people, not just local people. We need researchers, we need local authority, we need academic, we need media, think tank, so on. You know, media is so powerful this time. Even local people, they use TikTok. I'm very surprised. The grandmom, 60 years old, she used TikTok in order to explain her relationship with the Meko. It's very interesting. How you learn the TikTok? Oh, the NGO came and trained us how to use a TikTok in order to communicate our story. It's, see, local people is just very advanced now. I cannot use TikTok, see, it's funny. And we need spanning local community. We need just the community we always work with. We need to expand our interest to other people. We need policy maker, plan bureaucrats. So we can't do the binary things as ever. We need to accommodate many perspectives, not just us, but also the people sitting in other offices as well. So we need to consider a diverse form of agency. So when I talk about agencies, I mean the people who are capable to do things, who are capable to think, capable to act, who are capable to articulate their concern, their storytelling, as Ajahn said. Okay, next. And we need science communication. So we review a lot of research, myself, for example, how we simplify the complexity of science we are doing and to communicate with wider audiences, not just us. We are sitting in a comfort zone together here, but we need other people who don't know, or maybe they don't know what we are doing, to understand in a simple term. How are we going to do that? Maybe TikTok, Ajahn Kao, can be the most effective way to communicate. But you have to make sure that the TikTok or social media is very safe for local people too. They won't end up with any risk at all, because you have to be very transparent. You have to create a governance structure in order to make the local people safe enough to speak for themselves in front of the policymaker. And we need to harvest and utilize research outcome. We need quality research. What does it mean by quality research? Not just a research made by the people sitting here, but also the research made by local people as well. People can do the research themselves based on my experience. So I think the last slide, Ajahn. So the last slide. So we need to create safe space to secure the safe life for the people, the security safeguard. I mean, many people don't have electricity, they don't have the internet, they don't have any common language as we are using. So we need to provide opportunity for those marginalized people who don't have any access to this kind of thing, but their life already affected by the work project. How we provide space for them and back up them with technology infrastructure in order to allow them to get access to this kind of things. I don't know, things mean future literacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing us about the TikTok experiences in the local community. Yeah, this is something. Yeah, we learned from you about the local communities in the some kind like the social media movement. This is really good example. And just 1 minute wrap up, you share about some kind like 4 themes on the governance, mention about urgency, access, norms, and structures. But in conclusion, you say that you want to see all voice of the all sector in the society, especially for the indigenous people who can share, engage, and also fully participate in the policy perspective. Last but not least, you share about the research data collection should be conducted by the local people, but based on their own voice. And I really like your conclusion. You say that we need to work more and more for moving our future literacy or even the global communities to say more in the sustainable world. Anyway, yeah, thank you for sharing us the experiences. Okay, last, Professor Carl, maybe you can be the last one to give the reflection for our section.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Sutra, and also to the other panelists. It's been a really interesting discussion already so far. And first of all, thanks so much to colleagues and friends for joining today, the launch of this chat. What I hope to do with this 10-minute intervention is just to give a bit of an outline about some of the things we have in mind, some of the things that we've been doing. But actually, the purpose of this launch is also really to gather input about what we could or should be doing. So maybe like I actually like Ajahn Narimon's approach of like really deconstructing the word. To me, that's a key theme really of what we should be doing to the chair, like asking questions of what do we mean by the meaning of resource governance, for example. And actually, a lot of this is about removing assumptions about what that should be. But then that, as many speakers have acknowledged, that kind of runs up towards knowledge structures and other structures that produce the meaning of these words that are in common use in academia, as well as in policy and law and everyday practice. Have the next slide, please. So I think even Ajahn Kanapan's presentation just now has already emphasized like why resource governance matters. And Ajahn Apiwat earlier had emphasized that resource governance also needs to be thinking about meeting human needs, but equitably and sustainably. Really, resource governance is recognizing that people's livelihoods or well-being fundamentally or unavoidably depends upon the world around us, our environment, broadly defined. And although it may not be apparent every single day, although if you read the news or you read the air in Bangkok right now, you might think that it is. One of the challenges of humanity as a whole is that resources have been extracted and consumed and thrown away unsustainably for decades and decades now. And if you take one measure of the ecological footprint, this would estimate that since the 1970s, humanity as a whole has really already surpassed the capacity of the planet for us to have a continued sustainable future. As Ajahn Narimon already mentioned, there's lots of themes in that, like water, energy, agriculture, climate change, and social dimensions like forced displacement that connect to them. There's a lot of kind of language that's sometimes used about joining these things up, like the water, food, energy nexus, but they often take place within knowledge frameworks that also have sets of assumptions around them as well, around what resource governance should be. I also want to then emphasize that a lot of resource governance is not about just the management side, it's about how decisions are taken. So how can how can decision making become more inclusive, more transparent, more accountable because it's only through those types of values that we can really attain human security, work towards building peace, and have healthy ecosystems. And very central, therefore, to decision making is knowledge, and whose knowledge counts, whose knowledge is privileged, whose knowledge and whose voice is heard. And I think also very fundamentally is the very foundation of the ontologies that Ajahn Naramon and Dr. Patan was mentioning earlier really have to be paid attention to. That essentially a lot of the way of talking about resource governance emphasizes so-called modern thinking. But nowadays, I think these foundations are being shaken by what's sometimes been called the age of the Anthropocene. There's just a recognition that at the Earth scale, humans are changing the world around us in ways that are complex, but also beyond individuals. It's the emergence of large groups of people living in a particular way, but in a very unequal way, where the risks and the benefits are very unequally distributed. And I think one of the discussions that is really important that is already long-standing in indigenous knowledge and politics, and it's also kind of coming more into the social sciences now, is the recognition of the ethics of human nature relations and thinking about concerns of more than human things. So recognizing that the right to live for all of life, not just a human-centric approach. So then why futures literacy? Futures literacy is an emphasis on the question of, do we really think about what we think about the future? We have kind of assumptions about how we think about the future, but they're often not made explicit. And so some of this is also coming from the very process of development. That word is discussed and used a lot, but often taken for granted as well. So if you think about it, the meaning of the development is the promise of the future being better. It's this fundamental assumption that the future will be better than the present. And we don't really problematize that. So futures literacy is asking a question of how can we engage more critically and then constructively on thinking about futures plural. Because ultimately, we might find that we have quite limited imaginations towards what the future could be. Because as Ajahn Ganaphan has already mentioned, we're conditioned by the past. So how can we unsettle those assumptions to imagine other futures? And imagination is actually not just, I think thinking is important. We have to think in order to be able to act. Without thinking, action is blind. Action is dangerous, in fact. So thinking about how we think about the future is actually a profoundly deep act. And also we then have to recognize that when we think about policies and practices in the present, they are actually conditioned by how we can imagine what the future will be. So in a sense, to engage in critically thinking about how we think about the future, we're also engaging in the politics and the possibilities of the present. And so this is really why I think that this chair on resource governance and future literacy is emphasizing rethinking the possibilities of the future so that we can act more effectively in the present. And I think the role of the university, and this is a university hosted chair, but as has already been emphasized in many of the interventions, this is fundamentally to be seen as a hub and a platform, not to privilege university knowledge, but to actually co-constitute or co-construct or co-create, co-produce, co-design. There's so many transdisciplinary approaches, but really push forward agendas that are towards more inclusive and more actionable knowledge. So there's a number of different academics, departments, programming projects at the university that I think we can connect with on that agenda. I probably covered most of what I wanted to say just in the first slide, but let me move on to the next slide. To be quite brief, just to give you a bit of background, I guess the chair was really informed by an event that was very much catalyzed by Richard. have dialogue and deliberation on approaches towards the future. And I think the overall aspiration was to generate a sense of empowerment towards the future. I was really interested by Ajahn Apiwat's reference to the idea of hope, because some ways of thinking about the future can leave us feeling quite hopeless. And in a sense, if you think critically, you can end up in that point. I believe that critical thinking is very important because we have to look at the world around us and try and remove some of the assumptions that we might hold towards it. That is critical thinking. But then if we get stuck only in the critical, we are left disempowered. So the other half, which I think Dr. Pasang was emphasizing, and Elodie as well, was how do you move beyond just the critical part and the hopelessness part towards giving hope and empowerment through knowledge production. Next slide, please. So one example that we conducted last year was this Futures Literacy Lab. It was organized in collaboration with our colleagues in UNESCO, and it was on the theme climate change, climate action, and climate justice. And essentially, this was a co-designed laboratory. It was conducted online because it was at the time of COVID, where the first invitation was for students within Thai universities to come and join us to co-design the lab. And so we had 10 students who worked together with the UNESCO team and with ourselves to define the objectives of what the lab would be and then its detailed design, and then to invite a wider group of students into engaging with the actual lab. So the lab is essentially a kind of knowledge production and a co-design thinking process. So we had 30 students participate in the actual lab, and it has a 4-step process. One is that you start by just imagining probable or predicted or preferred futures within the context of what we know. Right? So essentially it was, how do we anticipate climate change unfolding and what are the implications for climate justice and for the group of participants themselves? Then, and this is the very crucial part, there's what's called a rethink exercise. And the intention is to totally unsettle our assumptions about the future. So it's almost like a spoiler alert, maybe, but I'm not sure how often UNESCO uses the same assumptions, but I want to share them because they really were quite profound in the way that it changed our thinking. So in this Futures Literacy Lab, we were told that rethink the future where seniority is reversed. The younger you are, the more senior you are in society. So babies are the most senior. Rocks are the source of main knowledge. And we live in a mermation society, the mermations of starlings that kind of reflexively respond to others around us. And then having thought through that future, it brings us back to the present. And we think, what have we learned? What would be the implications for reimagined futures going forward? So some of the participant personal learnings included that we don't have enough space at present to think about the futures, especially in these kind of, when you focus more on the future, it actually makes you think more about it. And we don't also have the tools to do so. So Futures Literacy Lab is one of those new tools. And also just the value of code. CSDS and our program could have said, here's the lab, let's join with us. But actually an important part of the lab was the co-design of the lab with the students. They owned it and they led it. And then it led to policy recommendations such as what has ethical standing in climate change negotiations. So one of their conclusions was that other life forms like forests should have legal standing in the negotiations. And that is, I think, reflected in some of the discussions we can see nowadays about the growing rights of nature movement. But these students will become the future leaders in society. So shifting thinking and assumptions at this point is an important part, I think, of empowerment and opening different possibilities for the future. So I'm almost out of time. The next slide. So I think the chair's already been introduced by the dean at the beginning of the session. We have 4 objectives. One is to build futures capacities. Second is to deepen conceptual understanding. Third is to catalyze transdisciplinary research. And the 4th is to be a convening platform. So more information is available online on some of these objectives with the chair. Next slide, please. These are some of the things that we've organized kind of in the name of the chair so far that actually I hope reflects some of what had been discussed earlier. So we've organized workshops about, or deep dives about rethinking the commons, about climate change, mobility and human rights, about just recovery and transition, and also transdisciplinarity in higher education for sustainable development. So I mean, these are some of the things that you might expect to see in the future, but also hopefully on the wider base. Okay, hopefully we'll be able to discuss more over the next 4 years. Last slide. So there's a range of activities that we plan that are organized around dialogue and engagement, research, and education and leadership. And in the interest of time, I won't go into them in detail. But what I would like to end with is an emphasis that we really hope this chair will be built through partnership and be relevant to everyone because of that partnership. And I think that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for your comprehensive sharing about your activities in our Chulalongkorn University, particularly the Future Literacy Laboratory at our university. The thing that I have learned from you more is about the you say the synchronization between management and also the decision making process in the current situation. And you mentioned about the imagination. I like that one, thinking for the future. But anyway, future is depend on you. What kinds of future you want to see, what kinds of future you want to dive in the long run. And you give some overview of the action or the roles of the university, academia in diving, and you pick up the key terms of the co-design, co-create. I think this is very good word, not just the beautiful word, but maybe you have to think about the mechanism, the processes under this co-design and co-creation. And I think the Future Literacy Laboratory is one of the good example. So maybe if you want to ask any question, this is time for the discussion. So you can see the time right now. I can allow just a few questions. Maybe you can introduce yourself in short, your organization. Yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And maybe you can let us know that which professor you want to ask question. Okay, maybe some.
So should I? Yeah. As you know, my name is Pasang Dolma Sherpa. I work for Center for Indigenous People Research and Development based in Kathmandu. But we have been also working and connecting our work in Asia, Africa, Latin America. And also now we are trying to connect South-South collaboration and also the North and South, and how we can make our voice to be heard from the ground level reality. Thank you so much for wonderful presentations. Very moved with Professor Narumon's presentation, sharing the ground reality of current communities, and is also connected my hearts on the struggle of indigenous peoples back home in the name of forest regime, conservation, and park, how disconnectedness of the interconnected and symbiotic relation of indigenous people with the natural resources, thinking that this will bring the sustainability, but it is an illusion. And I think this is the forum that we can break the ice, that to be heard, that the path that we are moving so far is not the sustainable. So I'm really, really proud and also feel so grateful to be here, and also very thankful the leadership of Chulalongkorn University under your leadership, and already moving ahead that need of changing the paradigm shift in terms of thinking from the roots. And I'm really moved. But one of the challenges that you have already internalized and realized on the ground, many times, even in the academician world or the researchers or at the global level, that they want indigenous knowledge, they want cultural values, but they do not want indigenous peoples. So this is the really bitter truth. And I believe, I believe this is the forum that will open up that if you really want to have indigenous knowledge and values and culture, we need to hear the voice of indigenous people. And that cannot be disconnected as the business as usual model of the modern values. So, because, as I said, I'm also teaching in the university, Kathmandu University. Before I was teaching more full time, and now because of my global engagements and also connecting local and national values, I have moved to visiting faculty in Kathmandu University and putting my full efforts by interconnecting the global academicians, researchers, indigenous leaders, elected bodies, how we can have indigenous study program that will start thinking of that indigenous values knowledge system and also making the proud of being indigenous persons that, to live with respect and dignity rather, humiliating in the that has been so far under this whole modern values, no? So how Chulalongkorn University take the leadership on this one, that we have internalized not only on the paper, but also internalization, realization, and also taking the ownership that bringing on her voice to be heard through indigenous study program in the coming days. So this is I would like to hear, and how we can have collaboration south-south and also interconnecting to the north and making our root and voice distinct as for the sustainability that we have already internalized from the ground reality. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pasang, for sharing your question. So if you don't mind, we want to hear all questions here, and maybe ask the speaker to answer at the same time.
Hi, my name is Rie Atagi. I work as an education consultant. I haven't quite figured out what I would like to ask, but since I work in the educational field, I would like to know how we can change not only at the higher education level, but at the basic education level too. This resource governance is a new field to me, but I was impressed, and I thought it's very important to learn environmental issue. And it's not just environmental science, but then communication with the community, connecting with indigenous people to what do you call mainstream people. I don't know the right word for it, but then also teaching method too, like a kinship model. You work with experiential, with community, in experiential learning. And those are important, not only at the higher education level. And actually at the higher education level, you have a flexibility for innovation. You can set up a new department and faculty. But at the basic education level, we are still living in a very traditional existing curriculum. Yeah. But when you talk about the future literacy, we are talking about what will be needed with assumption, like a strong assumption, but we don't have any evidence. How can we influence, affect people at the basic education level for future literacy? How can we change the existing curriculum? What's your thought on that? That's my question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your question. Maybe can we go to the next question and then ask speaker to maybe respond in the same time.
My name is Winky Ariando. I'm from Social Research Institute, Chulalongkorn University. I would like to deliver my question to Achan Karnwan. So as you presented that, I really like that you said that we have 4 dimensions in resource governance. Then I also work with resource governance in indigenous people in Indonesia. The thing that I would add into the 4 dimension is about the community movement and participation. It's really important. And as you see that in the field, like in the indigenous people communities, we are lacking of the indigenous researchers. It's considered like ethic and emic for both of the research that we are doing. And into your point of view, how to mobilize the community movement and participation into building the customary governance in research, because yeah, you know, we have many like a hidden agenda when we talk about research in the community level, like institutional interest, and also the development discourse depends on the knowledge politic in the grassroots and then also in the politics level. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ramses Dili from Chulalongkorn University EDS program. And my question is addressed to everyone. The future actually is not a matter of uncertainties anymore, because we can now reshape and predict the future by simply looking and living in that future using the present scenarios according to Ajahn Card. And Ajahn Ramon previously mentioned that indigenous communities is so powerful because they hold significant knowledge due to its comprehensive understanding of on-the-ground situations, such as the issues, the needs, and the importance, particularly towards resiliency and sustainability. Despite this, government, particularly in the local level, often neglect to involve them in policy implementation. Now, my question is, how are we going to convince the government about people governance in the policy level, especially the efforts made by us in the academics, in the academe? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for our questions. I guess that we have here because you want to have lunch. I guess maybe you can start off for the Q&A and respond maybe one by one. So I would love to ask our professor here, speaker, to maybe respond one question for to Dr. Pasang, and another question is about the educational system, especially in a sense of the environmental education in the traditional one, and in a sense to the future literacies. Next one is about the question from Venki, indigenous people directly asked to Ajahn Kanokwan. And last but not least from Ramses, probably I guess you asked Ajahn Carl, I don't know. So maybe if you want to maybe respond to the question, maybe one by one shortly, please. So Ajahn Puk, can you give?
Okay, I answer briefly because I think these questions are good to explore during the chairmanship. We can have projects and we can have research. I think indigenous people, they have been criticized mainly because they are too traditional or too modern. So that's why when we think about innovation, another word that I usually use is renovation. So we look back and we rethink about how indigenous knowledge, indigenous people could help us to think about future. So I think that needs to be explored. And another point is that Dr. Pasang talked about indigenous studies program. I think it's good not for indigenous people, indigenous persons only, but for us all. So we talk about co-creating knowledge, multiple knowledge system that need to be exchanged of knowledge, as well as the question raised about basic education. You know, we need to start to learn to live together among conflicting ideas from the very beginning, from the very young. Thank you.
I would like to respond to the last person first, and then the Indonesian young man. Okay, yep. It's very interesting question how we encourage the government to include, right, to invite local people or the marginalized people to be part of the decision-making process. It's really hard question. It's very hard to answer as well, because, you know, we need to create a platform. So we need to create the platform, or we call multi-stakeholders, platform. For example, based on my experience, the platform should help not just the government also, but the local people, the women, or the people who've been affected by any development projects. The platform help at least to broader understandings about the issue, even from the local people and the government side as well. So in that platform, we need to present the knowledge, the scientific knowledge or the research finding in order to capture everyone to discuss on the same thing. So the facilitators would be very articulating, bringing people together and share and allow the atmosphere to share the experience and the knowledge. So platform is very interesting, stakeholder platform. And also for the Indonesian student, I think, so from my experience, we have done Taiban research or villager research, and also we research for development. Villagers part of that research team, and they invited as the key person, not just the people who give the information, but the people who can analyze the data, can collect the data, and even to check the research finding as well. So it's we call R4D, research for development, and allow people in the village to present their own stories through platforms as well. So this is my experience, I think. Yep.
Thank you very much. I'll respond first to Dr. Pasang. So I think one of the interests that this chair is a platform with many people involved. But one of the things I'm personally really interested in is about the accountability of knowledge production. So there's a lot of, co-production of knowledge is a very popular idea now, but sometimes it seems that the knowledge co-production is not particularly equal. And there's actually a question I've noted to ask to you on your panel about how to avoid that knowledge co-production avoids being extractive and is actually genuinely equal. So I think one of the things that I'd be interested through the work of this chair is to think, well, how can grassroots literacy how can futures literacy that's often been used within larger organizations be used as a concept to focus onto grassroots movements and empowerment? What would a futures literacy lab look like that worked genuinely from the bottom up? So for example, around ideas of climate adaptation, working in indigenous communities or other communities in the region, how could these tools really create ways of thinking about adaptation that avoids the top-down narratives of adaptation approaches? So that's one part of the answer, I think, how the tools can be used in that way or applied. But I think the other thing is to rethink the ethics of doing research-led knowledge production. So I've been quite inspired recently by the book by Maxime Liboron on evolutionist colonialism, which I think is in Canada, right? And a short summary of that book would be that one part of it is that in academic research, as much of the emphasis should be on community peer review as it should be on academic peer review. They should be considered equally. So if the knowledge production is not considered acceptable to communities who academic researchers are working with, it should not be published in the same way as the academic peer review would reject papers. So I'm quite interested. I think that side of the research ethics is quite important too. So those are two ideas that I think we could develop. And then the other question maybe on basic education, or I guess this is like primary education. So I think you already mentioned, and Elodie also referred to experiential based learning or problem-based learning as well. So I think in primary education, some of these approaches are already being used, but oftentimes it's in extracurricular activities. And personally, when I have visited some high schools as a part of our student projects, it's actually quite remarkable how many interesting extracurricular activities connect the young students to different aspects of nature, like running community gardens, for example, in the schools, or doing the reuse, recycle, reduce concepts as extracurricular. I think for this chair, the way to approach this would actually be to bring educators into what we're doing. So not necessarily to say our expertise is to work with the youth, but actually we have a faculty of education or a faculty of pedagogy. How can we work with those experts to bring it into the policy round discussion? So I think as one potential way is through bringing in educators like yourself to help us undertake this collaborative work together.
All right, I think it's time for lunch. Yeah, I can say. So if you want to give some kind like long discussion to all speakers here, why not talk more during lunch time? So before closing, continue to the closing remark, we want to hear from the co-chair of this section, Professor Sulichai. Can you say something short about the wrap up for this section? And then maybe we can close and go for lunch later on. Please, Professor. This is near lunchtime. I can say something short.
We need to have lunch at 12:30. And now it's already 3 minutes and a half to go. I cannot really relate holistically to what has been said by all the speakers. But if you allow me to say that from the position that I am sitting here as someone as youngest in this room, turning around what you see, I have in that sense, I would like to say from what I think we have used this opening opportunity as how to stimulate our university, our work, so that they can be more engaged. But my point is, I have been here in this faculty for a long while after, since my university days and undergrad until now. 71, I graduated from here. So I don't count because I am so young. But my first point is related really to the how can university learn? How can university learn? We here do have some words that is quite fashionable these days. Lifelong learning. But that is for others. That is not for the university. I mean, all these key new words are for others, not for the university itself. So university, in a way, this is how to make the university go beyond its own self. I think this is my first point, getting all stimulations, getting all the challenging issues. We live in a world where we are, if not clearly, but we are almost paralyzed in our actions, immobilized in our ability to respond meaningfully. I would like to emphasize this part because Ajahn Sato mentioned that the teachers are more difficult than the students. Yeah, not only the teachers, but if we can take the word as an entity, University Tokyo, so much its own pride of its. Chulalongkorn University, so much egocentric in the world where it is the oldest university of this country. So you see, this is my first point. The institutional syndrome that we are living with needs some new innovative ways. And this launch is one event of such a kind, I hope. But it cannot be the only, because without friendships and solidarity, this is a key word that we use from our first future literacy engagement by using UNESCO. Using UNESCO, my second point is related to what Dr. Pasang mentioned about South-South and South-South cooperation, meaning the underdeveloped country learning from each other. But that is a UN word, beautiful word. Usually they don't learn from each other. Usually they're supposed to learn from the advanced countries. And the advanced country feel that they feel better if they are flattered. So no one really learn anything in big picture. In the world where crises have been every day now. Crisis is not something to come. We have crisis every day. And our opening for how to learn from each crisis, maybe from Chiang Rai this morning, if you follow the news, or cesium 137 in Thailand, there was one factory lost somehow, and nuclear stuff was lost and supposedly to be taken away for some kind of recycling business, but so damaging, so difficult, and no one really know how to do with it. So my last point would relate to the issue is that it's so complex, but we need a simple way to communicate this complexity together. That is, may I say, we need friends. Simple words. We need friends. We need people who share the same sense of worries and same sense of pride, but not in ego, nor institutional ego, even worse, national egos. All these are so difficult to deal with. And we do need that broader platform that is not only in the terms of simple victims and victimizers, but platform that demands more others, but not just beautiful words like stakeholders, where they don't count power relations. So I think in that sense, we need friends who really share the concern and share the sense of new learning always, and able to warn each other, to encourage each other, one another. More, the new generation of our graduates are even more important in our next encounter. And for that, opening more for the communities, for the people who are not usually counted in our learning, like what we call IP, indigenous peoples. And that Pasang said very well, just like the poor in Thailand, their poverty is a very serious issue, a well accepted national policy, but the people in power don't like the poor. They don't welcome them. So that I think this the issue, how to speak to power, how to engage with power, including power within. And for that, I think power within is what we hope to create together, so that we can relearn and we can strengthen our solidarity much more for the very much demanding period of human history like now. Thank you.
Okay, for sure. Last but not least, I want to send back to Ms. Michiko.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Sutirat. Now, may I invite Professor Dr. Kewali Chattarong, Vice President for Strategic Planning, Innovation and Global Engagement, Chulalongkorn University, to give closing remarks.
Honorable guests, distinguished speakers, colleagues, friends, on behalf of Chulalongkorn University, it is a privilege to say a few words in closing the public forum that launched UNESCO Chair for Resource Governance and Futures Literacy. First of all, I would like to congratulate you all in convening together today, both on site and online, to be engaged in a deep conversation on resource governance and futures literacy. Resource honorable guests, distinguished speakers, colleagues, friends, on behalf of Chulalongkorn University, it is a privilege to say a few words in closing the public forum that launched UNESCO Chair for Resource Governance and Futures Literacy. First of all, I would like to congratulate you all in convening together today, both on site and online, to be engaged in a deep conversation on resource governance and futures literacy. Resource governance is indeed the core of sustainability. If we are serious about making a difference in society, resource governance needs to be at the top of our global agenda. In light of our global crisis at hand, it demands much more dynamic participation from all sectors of society. This is absolutely evident in the current context of our world today, triggered by devastating wars and conflicts, natural and man-made disasters. Our human security is at stake, not to mention food and energy security. However, we are still constrained by national and short-term interests, even in the face of the increasing complexity and interconnectedness of the challenges and change that confront us. I believe you will all agree with me that we need innovative and new frameworks of thinking and action. We need transdisciplinary, cross-sectional, cross-generational, and cross-cultural collaborations. In this context, I am truly grateful that, having been recognized for our commitment, Chulalongkorn University was recently appointed UNESCO Chair for Resource Governance and Futures Literacy, and is now leading these efforts. Chulalongkorn University is committed to generate and support innovations for society, to strengthen multi-stakeholder collaborations, to serve society at large. We are working to transform our institution and ourselves, which takes reimagining and redefining the role of universities to serve the broader public good, to serve the global commons. Through the missions and plans clearly spelled out by our UNESCO Chair, which are aligned with national, regional, and global sustainable strategies, we can contribute to building stronger human capacity through futures literacy. Before closing, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the speakers, facilitators, and partners who have kindly convened together with us to create meaningful engagements to work towards a better world. I would also like to take this opportunity to extend my deepest appreciation to the Thai National Commission for UNESCO that at the Ministry of Education Thailand, who has given us invaluable advice and support in realizing Jula's UNESCO chair. Thank you very much for your kind participation in this forum. I look forward to our collaborations ahead to reshape our vision, practices, and strategies toward transforming governance and institutions for global sustainability.
Thank you very much, Ajahn Gewali. This UNESCO chair is to facilitate university level framework, but definitely go beyond university framework to address challenges of strategic importance for our society. Because of the tremendous transitional challenges that we are in, I believe we have a very fine momentum to work together across sectors in the world. As the Office of International Affairs and Global Network, where I come from, we are committed to support this development of the Chulas UNESCO chair. By providing multi-stakeholder platform for knowledge exchange, co-creation, and connecting initiatives that would multiply our efforts. I would like to thank Dr. Carl Middleton, heading this chair, taking a very important leadership. Together with our colleagues and partners, we will be organizing lecture series, futures literacy labs, and other training and engagement activities ahead for academics, but not just for the academics, but practitioners, students, and the like. And we'll be looking forward to more novel kind of collaborations ahead. I would like to close the program today by expressing my sincere appreciation to all the speakers, our resource persons, and participants for your engaging participation, and looking forward to our continued collaboration ahead. Thank you very much. We would like to take a group photo before you go. So can we just quickly, I think, move this way, please? Yes, everyone, please come forward.